It's an interesting time for business. Tariff and trade policies are dynamic, supply chains are squeezed, and cash flow, it's tighter than ever. If your business can't adapt in real time, you are in a little bit of hurt. So how do you get full visibility and adapt in real time? Over 42,000 businesses trust NetSuite by Oracle, your AI-powered business management suite. It brings accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR all under one roof. NetSuite is the #1 cloud ERP for a reason. It's your single source of truth, giving you the data and control you need to move quickly. Real-time forecasting helps you move into the future with confidence, and with AI built in, you can automate the busy work and focus on strategy. NetSuite helps you see what's stuck, what it's costing you, and how to pivot fast. If I were running a business with a lot of moving parts, I'd use NetSuite for full control over everything. Tame the chaos with NetSuite. If your revenues are at least in the 7 figures, download the free ebook, Navigating Global Trade, 3 Insights for Leaders at netsuite.com/SPI. That's netsuite.com/SPI. You spent months building towards launch day, but when the clock hits 0, your site crashes. Bots swarm, and loyal fans rage on Reddit. That's not good. Fanfare was built to stop that. Fanfare is the drop platform made for high-pressure moments, stampede-proof infrastructure, verified waitlists, and bot filters that actually work. Instead of refunds and rage, you get retention and revenue. And that sounds great to me. Your next launch shouldn't be a gamble. Get Fanfare's 5-step hype drop playbook and learn how to bulletproof your drop at fanfare.io/playbook. Again, that's fanfare.io/playbook.
What is most powerful about having this type of conversation is not actually the answers you get in the moment, as helpful as those are. What's most powerful is that it gives permission to have another conversation about how it's going. I've actually somehow got more permission to actually say that to you now, rather than seethe and resentment, because you're actually saying, this is the start of us continuing to fine-tune the way we work together. It's not a one and done thing. It's actually a checking in.
Today, we're chatting with one of my favorite people, somebody who's been on the show before, somebody whose book has been absolutely life-changing for me as a person who coaches others and as a parent. That book is called The Coaching Habit. Shout out to Chris Ducker, who is the one who referenced and offered that book to me. But Michael Bungay Stanier is the person who I'm talking about today. And he's back on because he's got a new book, which is definitely going to be life-changing for several people as well, myself included. And it's this book that's about relationships, not just about relationships with your spouse or loved ones, which is important. And Michael tells a very heartfelt story about the origin of this book related to that in his family, but really about the relationships that we have with our team, with the people around us, our colleagues, and trying to create the best possible relationship in that particular party, right? So let's just get right into it. Here he is, Michael Bungay Stanier. This is session 695 of the Smart Passive Income Podcast. And he and I had recently had lunch together to talk about each other's books, mine coming up in the very soon future, but Michael's right now. Check it out. He'll tell you about it, where to get it, all that good stuff. Here we go.
You're listening to the Smart Passive Income Podcast, a proud member of the Entrepreneur Podcast Network, a show that's all about working hard now so you can sit back and reap the benefits later. And now your host. One of his favorite documentaries is the making of the Disney Wish cruise ship, Pat Flynn.
Running a business means legal questions are inevitable. Is this contract or agreement solid? What can I do if a client won't pay me? Am I set up properly for taxes? Well, rather than trying to navigate all of this on your own or searching endlessly online, imagine having a law firm on your side without the high hourly rates. That's exactly what Legal Shield's small business plans offer. With Legal Shield, entrepreneurs get access to real legal support, contract reviews, collection letters, guidance on business formation, and even help handling IRS audits. Members can book consultations, upload documents through the app, and work with a provider law firm that understands small business laws in your state. You also get proactive help on tax and trademark questions so you can stay ahead of legal risks. And if a client delays payment, Legal Shield can send professional collection letters to help you recover what you're owed, all for a fraction of what traditional attorneys charge. Go to LegalShield.com/SPI or call 833-570-9980 to learn more and get big business legal support without a big business budget. That's LegalShield.com/SPI. Do you know the secret to businesses that are scaling faster than ever? They're using Upwork to tap into a diverse pool of skilled freelancers across various industries. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts who are ready to help you take your business to the next level. I've personally used Upwork myself and can vouch for it. Posting a job on Upwork is easy. With no cost to join, you can register, browse freelancer profiles, get help drafting a job post, or even book a consultation. From there, you connect with freelancers that get you and can easily hire them to take your business to the next level. Upwork makes the entire process easier, simpler, and more affordable with industry-low fees. Post a job today and hire tomorrow with Upwork. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That is Upwork.com to post your job for free and connect with top talent ready to help you grow your business. That's Upwork.com. Again, Upwork.com. Michael, welcome back to the Smart Passive Income Podcast, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Pat, it's always a pleasure to be in your company. Thank you.
You know, your work has had a profound effect on my life. Specifically, one of the last times you were on the show, you talked about your book, The Coaching Habit, and it really helped me define how to be a better, not just coach to my students here at SPI, but also a better father, really, to help them unlock the power that they have inside of themselves versus just what is the name of your second book, which is The Advice Trap, which is kind of where I was. So just thank you so much for your work there. I know it's had a profound effect on a lot of my listeners as well, so thank you.
That's such a nice acknowledgement. I really appreciate it.
So I'm curious because your books always come from personal experiences, I find, and your new book, How to Work with Almost Anyone. I'm curious about the personal experiences that led you to write this book. It's always really interesting to hear these stories from you.
Yeah, I find my books come from two sources. One is me just in how I manage my life, which is I get to a certain point and I go, what's the next best project that I could be working on now? And, I've got all sorts of ideas for books and other things I can do. I've got that shiny object syndrome. So I'm like, okay, of all the things I could do, what would most fulfill me? What would most contribute and make the world a better place? And so in some ways, it's just that process, which is me choosing to write the book because this is the best thing I can think of to do with my time and my energy right now, my resources. But you're right. There's an origin for this story. And it starts with being taught by a man called Peter Block, who's one of the great thinkers in management and how we work in organizations. And teaching me something called the social contract, which is like, let's actually have a conversation about how we work together before we work together. But its real origin, Pat, came a couple of years ago when my dad was dying. And I was back in Australia to be with my parents. And Dad had survived a scary moment in the hospital where we thought he was going to die. And he got back to the house, which was a great victory. But he was mostly bedbound. And I was living in the house with Mum and Dad as my childhood house. So there's all sorts of stuff I probably need to see a therapist about as a 55-year-old going back into my childhood bedroom. But I noticed Mum and Dad were pretty snarky with each other. Just, they have such a deep and really powerful 55-year-old relationship, but they were sniping at each other. And no wonder, right? It was like the most stressful situation, plus the dynamic of how they had operated as this really successful couple for all those decades had shifted in a really profound way. And sort of seized my courage. I went, can I see if we can have a conversation between the two of you around how you'd like to be together over these remaining weeks and maybe months of Dad's life? Because I want it to be the best it can be for Dad, and I want it to be the best it can be for Mum. And the relationship is under stress. Let's talk about how we want to be with each other, how you two want to be with each other, so that you have the best chance of rising to the challenge and doing as good a job as you can. And Pat, they were so reluctant to have this conversation, almost as reluctant as I was to try and facilitate it, because I'm like, this is like, I'm in deep waters here. I don't know what I'm doing really. But eventually Dad kind of went, I think we should do it. And Mum went, okay, I really don't want to do it, but I'll give it a shot. And they did such a good job. And it was such a kind of connection around, let's talk about this. Let's not talk about what you want to eat or how we're going to manage your oxygen tanks or whether the bed's comfortable. Let's talk about how you want to be together. And in some ways that became the engine for this next book, which is like, there's something really powerful about a conversation about how to be together rather than what to do together. And that's the engine in this new book.
Yeah, wow. There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, thank you for sharing that. Number one, when a couple gets together, business partners or life partners, right, they perhaps evolve and change, and these conversations need to continue to happen. I mean, perhaps there was an understanding in sort of stage one of the relationship, but then as it enters into these different stages, thoughts, goals, dreams, wants, problems, concerns change. And I think having a structure of how to have those conversations is important, because I've seen it many times where people grow apart because they just don't have a forum to discuss these things. And, in business, a lot of people get into business before even understanding what the other person wants and
understanding anything. If they're like me, I'm like, I don't know anything about business or relationships. What am I doing?
Right. Or the goal is the same, right? Like, let's make a business that rocks, but then the two people have different approaches or have different goals, and one wants to sell, the other doesn't, or there's a lot to unpack here. So I appreciate that this stems from something personal, because it should always feel personal when it comes to who you talk to and how you relate to them. But correct me if I'm wrong, that like step one is really like, let's both be open to having these conversations. And how do you get a person over that reluctancy to have these conversations?
Well, in some ways, it's to say to the people listening who pick this up and think it might be a good idea, is to be the brave person who says, let's have a conversation about how we're going to work together rather than what we should be working on. Because it is a really safe bet that somewhere down the line, the working relationship's going to go off the rails. I talk about working relationships because that's kind of the framework for the book. This stuff has deep roots in all relationships. So this is kind of a good human being skill, not just a work partner skill. But, if you're founding a company or working with somebody, you'll have a great honeymoon period where you're like, this is so exciting. And then something will go wrong. Something will go south. If you've got somebody on your team, you're going to like, we love working with each other, or at least it's good, it's solid. And then something will go wrong. If you have a great customer and you're like, this is a great customer, and then something will go wrong. So who's going to be brave enough to say, I care enough about the quality and the importance of this relationship to actively manage it, rather than just cross my fingers and hope for the best? So the starting point, forget hoping the other person's going to be brave enough. It's like, start with you and go, am I going to be brave enough to say the quality of the working relationship matters to me? Because I can tell that when it's good, I feel successful and happy. And when it's bad, it's like it is a diminishing experience. How will I take responsibility for that?
I feel that. For sure. Why is it a brave thing to have a conversation? Why are we so scared of doing that? What are the stories we're telling ourselves before we have that conversation that might stop us from doing so?
Well, I think two things, Pat. It's such a good question as well. One is, it's just an unusual conversation. So part of the bravery that's sometimes required is like, I don't quite know how to do this. It's not like this is something that I do regularly. Having been practicing it in some way or another for 30 years, it does get better and it does get easier. It does get less kind of awkward. But certainly when you start off, you're like, I haven't done this very often. But there's also a double twist of vulnerability that's involved here. The first act of vulnerability is actually holding up a mirror and going, who am I? What do I care about? What is good for me? What is bad for me? So it asks of you a degree of self-knowledge. And in the book, there's actually exercises to help you deepen and get more nuanced and more subtle about how you talk about, what it looks like when things are going well for you and what it looks like when things are not going well for you. But then there's this bravery, vulnerability in saying some of that out loud and asking for what you want. Now, a deep part of the work I do, Pat, is about helping people build adult-to-adult relationships with the people with whom they work. Work has this force that often diminishes and sometimes infantilizes working relationships, gets you kind of kicked into a dysfunctional relationship. I want to try and balance that out, adult-to-adult relationships. And the engine of an adult-to-adult relationship is asking for what you want, knowing that the answer may be no. And so when you ask that, there is this degree of vulnerability in there as well, I think.
How do you make it not feel like, if you're going to step up and be the brave person because you really care about this and you want to fix it or work together to fix it at least, how do you make it not feel like an interrogation or like an intervention, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I think the essence is that you ask and you answer questions. It is an equal exchange. of information. So, Peter Block years ago called it a social contract. I didn't love that language because it feels a bit cold and a bit abstract. I'm not sure what it means. And if I say, how do you build the best possible relationship, that feels a bit more tangible to me. But the power of the word contract is that a contract in business is an exchange of value. You're going to give me this, I'm going to give you that. Whether that's time or money or a product or a service, whatever it might be, you agree that this is an equal exchange. This only works if there's an equal exchange of information. So when I ask you, Pat, for instance, like the good day question, which is, what can we learn from successful past relationships? And you tell me like, I had this great working relationship. It was great. Jay taught me this. Jay taught me that. It flourished because of whatever. If I don't then give you, well, let me tell you what I learned from my past successful working relationships, it feels more like an interrogation. It needs to be a sense that we are co-creating our shared definition of what a best possible relationship could be.
That's a beautiful answer. Now, what I love about your book is it's about these questions that are brought up, and it's very the coaching habit, if you will, in its style of teaching, which is through asking questions to discover the answers for yourself. So can you guide us through these questions and help us understand why those questions work so well to help us have a better relationship?
Of course. Let me start, Pat, by framing what I mean by best possible relationship. So it's like, let's kind of define our terms. What are we even talking about? I think a best possible relationship has 3 key attributes to it. It needs to be safe, it needs to be vital, and it needs to be repairable. So safe, we probably heard a bit about. Amy Edmondson is the OG of psychological safety, and she's all about, it creates safety in your teams, in your organization. People will be willing to say stuff that might feel a bit risky. People will be willing to show up in a way that is a more fulsome representation of who they are. And, when I've been talking to people about this, most people have heard about psychological safety. Most people have some thoughts and kind of make some effort towards psychological safety. So that's great. That's a great place to start. The second attribute is this vital? And part of what I like about the word vital is it has those 2 meanings. Vital meaning essential, but vital also meaning full of life, enliven, full of adventure. For me, a vital relationship is one that pushes me, challenges me, has a sense of fun and adventure to it, makes me step out to the edge of what I know and who I am and what I can do. That kind of like makes the heart beat a little faster. And safe and vital aren't A plus B. They actually exist in tension with each other. There's a way that you can imagine a relationship that is very safe, but has lost the spark. And you can also imagine a relationship that is, full of danger and adventure. But if it goes wrong at all, it breaks. It's brittle because it doesn't have that safety. So if you and I were working on a best possible relationship together, Pat, we'd be going, what's the combination of safety and vitality that you and I want to have? We might have similar or different needs, and we need to figure that out together. And then the third attribute of the 3 is repairability. This came from kind of reading some of the great writers about more general relationships, people like Esther Perel, people like Dan Siegel, people like Terry Real, people like John Gottman. And one of the things that became obvious in going through all of their work was we're not that good at repairing broken relationships. Often something gets dented or cracked or banged into, torn, and we throw up our hands a little bit and go, see, this just proves it. And, the good news is I think relationships have a degree of being self-healing over time, a combination of time and bad memory and necessity. But they don't always repair back. They don't knit back together completely. They still remain a little damaged. And this ability to say, what if we could more actively repair this? Just as in business, that one of the paradoxes of business is if you screw up with a customer, but then you do a really good job at making it good with them, that customer becomes more loyal to you. It's one of the paradoxes. Yeah, customers are more loyal if you've screwed it up and then you've gone over the top to fix it, rather than you've just delivered consistently good, customer service to them.
I remember reading studies, like hotel feedback studies about that. It is strange, but that makes sense.
It's weird, but it's one of those things which is like, if you can figure out how to do minor deliberate screw ups with people and then amaze them with how you solve it for them, you're going to actually generate increased customer loyalty. So the third piece is like, how do you repair it? Because if you don't just hope that it self-heals, but actively repair it, there's a way that this relationship not only gets back to where it was, but actually goes further and becomes deeper and more and stronger.
It almost becomes a filter, if you will, to both get on the same page with and to have an understanding, like almost ground rules for the relationship before these questions are even answered. Are there any signals or anything that we need to pay attention to when building a relationship that might offer that maybe this isn't the best relationship? Are there you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, like I don't feel safe here, or I don't feel that this is a person that I want to continue to repair relationships with, and maybe it's best to break it off.
Yeah, I think that is the case sometimes. Sometimes you're like, you know what, this, yeah. That Woody Allen quote? I'm not sure if Woody Allen's still somebody you can quote, but he's funny. And he goes, look, relationships are like sharks. They need to keep moving. This is a dead shark. Sometimes you're like, what you have in your head is a dead shark. The concept in the book is this idea of a best possible relationship. And that's a deliberately chosen phrase. It's not the best relationship. It's the best possible relationship. Because if you look at your current and past relationships, there'll be a bell curve. You'll have a few at one end where you're like, man, this is fantastic. This person, somehow we clicked, somehow we elevated each ourselves. We just kind of were a really good partnership. And at the other end of the bell curve, you're like, there was always sand in the gears. It was always a struggle. And it wasn't even that they were a terrible person or that I was a terrible person. We just couldn't somehow make it click. We couldn't kind of find a way of working. And then, of course, most people are somewhere in the middle, solid, pretty good most of the time, occasionally not that good. But wherever your relationship is on the bell curve, I think you can ask yourself, what's the best possible version of this relationship? Because sometimes the answer is to walk away and say, this doesn't work for me and for us, so I'm going to end it. But sometimes you don't have that choice. And then you've got to go, look, with you, not a good relationship. What can I do to make it as good as it can be? So it goes from being bad to being less bad. If you right in the middle, which is like you're perfectly okay, but it's like we're both in sort of 6 out of 10 cruising through it. How do we take it from that to something a little more enlivening, a bit more exciting for both of us? And for the brilliant ones, you're like, how do we keep this as good as it is? Because we can just hope that it stays shiny and bright and powerful and energizing. But actually, what if we actively made that happen rather than just hope that the gods were going to be on our sides?
Yeah, that's good.
By the way, Pat, I'm just celebrating your T-shirt. I know some people won't see that because they're listening to it, but you've actually got "We is greater than me" on the T-shirt, which I'm like, that is a perfect T-shirt for this particular conversation. So thank you for that.
It is. Shout out to Stu McLaren, who printed this shirt for his mastermind. I wear it all the time because I agree. It's just a wonderful message for everything from the community-centric business we now have, but also just even the one-on-one relationships they need to have in a two-way street, and it's about the collective whole. So what I'm hearing is that maybe in some cases, like when we're thinking about the relationships we have, especially with our employees or our coworkers or colleagues, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody you have in your life needs to be your best friend, that you're going to...
Impossible.
Exactly. But every relationship has a best outcome in a sense. And that's what we're trying to work toward here.
That's right. And not just for that's going to make us all feel happy, clappy, and kind of warm and fuzzy. Because if you think about the very best working relationships you've had and the impact it's had on you, it's helped you be braver. It's helped you be more courageous. It's helped you go further. It's helped you felt more alive at work. And if you think about the worst working relationships that you've had to endure, you know that it's made you lose your confidence, your sense of competence, your sense of risk. There's been a diminishment in who you are. It's not insignificant. A way of thinking about this is that conversation between strategy and culture. That saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, strategy is the work, culture are the people. And what we're talking about here is like, how do you make the people around you amplify the best of the work? Because if the people and the relationships aren't working, it doesn't matter about the work. You're still going to have your soul sucked out of you if it's surrounded by people where you don't have the best possible relationship.
Right. Right. And this is very much about, building the best culture that you can. So if you are a business owner, perhaps I would definitely recommend, not only do you read Michael's book, again, it's called How to Work with Almost Anyone, available on Amazon. And is there a website that you want to point people to as well? Or
Yeah, thanks. Bestpossiblerelationship.com.
I like that. Bestpossiblerelationship.com. This might be good reading for your own employees so that we can all understand how to better work with each other, have conversations and such. And what I love about this is it's not, there's a lot of things out there that help companies have a better culture, and many of those things are great. Sometimes they're tactile and they're strength finders tests, and there's all those kinds of, categorizations of who works well with who. But this goes down to just the relationship itself and the conversations that are happening. So let's get into maybe a few of these questions. We don't have to go through all of them, but which one maybe comes to mind first that is most important to uncover?
Let's start with the very first one, which is the amplify question. And the question is, what's your best? And, I think about that now, I'm like, that may still not be quite the very best expression of that question, but I got there because I didn't want to say, what are you good at? I didn't want to say, what are your strengths? I wanted to kind of have a more holistic question, which is like, tell me what you're like when you're at your best, when you shine and when you flow. Because shining and flowing are kind of the internal and the external states of this. The flow state, Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, the Czech psychologist, which is like when time speeds up and slows down and you're like, oh, this is it. I've found my zone. And shining is when people look at you and you go, I don't know what Pat's doing over there, but he's in his happy place. It's like, maybe this is you on your Pokemon channel and you're like, let me tell you about Pokemon. I'm like,
definitely
this is, there we go. So if you haven't watched Pat's Pokemon channel, you should, because it's you taking all this stuff from SPI and going, let me show you how to do this in a whole different way and role model my own teachings. But it's also you going, look, this is Pat geeking out about something he totally loves and he's in that place. So that question, what's your best, speaks to more than just what your strengths are, but it's more on this line of what lights you up, what gets you going. And you can kind of go, what are your technical things, like the stuff that you do that is you at your best?
Yeah.
What's the relationship thing that you do when you're at your best? How do you contribute there? And then just at your core, what are your strengths? What are your values? What do you stand for? How do you show up when you're in that shining and flowing state?
I like that question. It reminds me of one of my most hated questions, which I hear a lot, is, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's very specific. It's very, like, how could a kid even know
It's ridiculous.
what is even available to them?
Yeah.
Like, we're already asking them to put themselves in a category, rather than the question that I love to ask kids is, what lights you up? Right? I get to know a lot more about that person or that child specifically when I ask them that. And then from there, you can, of course, understand, oh, well, here are the potential career options that may make sense for you in that case, if you do want to know kind of what they're into or what might make sense for them. But, to go back to the question, that idea of flow and energy and, what makes you shine, what makes you glow. I want to challenge the audience right now to think about that for themselves, because I think it's a question I would guess that most people have never even considered.
Right.
We consider like what makes us happy or like what would make us happy or what things might we acquire to help us feel good.
Yeah.
But rather like what puts us in that state where time goes really quickly because we're having just such a good time. And how do we, it feels very ethereal, very energy based.
Yeah. It is about kind of unlocking the best version of you. And if you don't know how to answer that for yourself, how on earth could you expect somebody you're working with to do their best to provide the conditions and the way of working together that will bring that forth? So part of this whole process is know yourself better so you can be clearer about actually what's going to bring out the very best in you.
Right. This is the mirror that you were talking about.
This is the mirror, exactly. And then you can dig a little deeper around this. So in the book, each of the 5 questions has 3 exercises that help deepen your own sense of self and knowledge. And one of the exercises for this question is knowing the difference between good at and fulfilled by. Because one of the curses of making it into middle age is you get good at a whole bunch of stuff that no longer gets you excited, or you're good at a whole bunch of stuff that has never got you excited. And you know what that is for you, but nobody else really does. And when you look at other people, you assume that what they're good at is what fulfills them. So you go, look, I know Pat's excellent at this stuff, so I'm just going to give that to him to do because he rocks it. He's really good at it. He'll do a great job. And, and what I don't know is that Pat's heart is turning to ice inside because he's like, these are handcuffs. I did this thing. I got good at this 10 years ago and I'm going to be stuck doing it for the rest of my life. And what a powerful conversation to say to somebody, look, I'm actually pretty good at this, but honestly, I'll do anything to avoid it because it no longer brings me joy. It no longer fulfills me. I mean, I can do it if in an emergency, but if you can not default to giving it to me, that's going to make my life better right away.
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. And what's also powerful is that we're already almost a half hour into this and it felt like it's only been 5 minutes, which means, this is lighting me up. And truly this, having conversations like this and with people like you, Michael, is definitely something that puts me into that flow state and makes, I feel a glow, if you will, with conversations like this. So again, I appreciate you.
You also have a great skincare routine, so that's helping.
I mean, I have a filter on right now, but no. I'm just kidding.
Okay, there we go.
That's wonderful. Okay. And I mean, we could go so deep into this. I mean, I remember I just finished watching episode 1 of Ramit Sethi's new Netflix show, How to Be Rich, which is
that's right,
amazing. And actually my kids got into it as well, which has been an amazing conversation piece for us to start teaching them the ins and outs of money and managing it and what happens if you don't. And there's a particular couple that was in the first episode that they just don't know how to talk to each other. It's very clear that when one person is trying to be brave, the other person is just not having it. And I think a lot of it is because they haven't had these types of conversations yet about, like, before even getting into the finances, like, what is your ideal state and how do you want to be spoken to? One thing I talk about in business, and specifically in my mastermind groups, which is a little bit like this, is we do a little exercise whenever new members of a mastermind group come in where we talk about how we want to be spoken to. And I'm very much a person who, if you were to come at me and say, like, become like a boot camp drill sergeant kind of teacher, which is one way to, get people to do things, I don't react well to that. I will put up a shell and I will escape. Versus encouragement or helping me realize what the rewards are on the other end of this.
Right. And
despite perhaps not doing things correctly, still highlighting the small things that I do right so that I can, get encouraged to do those other things right. And this way, these members of my group are now able to better communicate with me moving forward. Do you talk any bit about communication styles inside of the book? Because what I found is different people react different ways to the way things are said.
That's so interesting. I don't dig into that in the book, and I'm now like, maybe I can squeeze in another chapter in there because it's a really useful insight. But I will say this is where your reflection's taking me, Pat. What is most powerful about having this type of conversation is not actually the answers you get in the moment, as helpful as those are. What's most powerful is that it gives permission to have another conversation about how it's going. Because if I've had a conversation with you around how do you want to be spoken to, how do you want to interact, and I'm like, well, Pat, I'm best if you give me encouragement and a gentle nudge, not shouting and shaming and humiliating, then you do that thing where you're like, you know what, I actually felt, like you stepped over the line there. I've actually somehow got more permission to actually say that to you now, rather than seethe and resentment, because you're actually saying, this is the start of us continuing to fine-tune the way we work together. It's not a one-and-done thing. It's actually a checking in. And one of the questions that I think is most powerful and that I use all the time with the people with whom I work is, what needs to be said that hasn't yet been said? Because I know In my world, I'm the founder of 2 companies. I'm often the teacher of the thing. I've got a certain amount of status and authority that comes with being old, being tall, and being white, and having books written, and all of that sort of stuff. So it means that my mere presence is a discouragement to say some stuff, because power rests with me. And the question, what needs to be said that hasn't yet been said, is an invitation to say that little thing that's kind of, you've been trying to find the right moment or has been whispering, or you're like, I'm not sure I have permission to say this. It gives permission for that conversation to continue, that thing to be said that can help the conversation move on, stay the best possible relationship, be repaired, stay safe, stay vital, all of those good things.
Is that question one of the questions marked in the book?
It's not, but it's a question that is in the book, but it's part of the general conversation around the 5th question. The 5th question is the repair question, which is, how will we fix it when things go wrong? So we've kind of talked a little bit about this already, but it says, hey, look, I really like you. You really like me. This is a honeymoon period. I mean, we've just hired somebody on in my company, and they're in their first week, and we were chatting on Monday, and I was like, so how's your first week? And it's like, it's amazing. It's so great. I love you. I love her. And I'm like, it is amazing. We love each other. And in my mind, I'm like, and this too will pass. Like, there's going to come a moment where Emma will go, Michael, I'm starting to see the real who you are. And maybe it is not as great. I'm like, great. So we're still allowing this. We need to know how to repair it when it gets broken, even though we love each other at the moment, because we're 7 days into a working relationship. And so this repair question, how will we fix it when things go wrong? One of the questions that helps uncover what needs to be repaired is what needs to be said that hasn't yet been said. But one of the preemptive acts you can do, this is one of the kind of the deeper dive exercises, is the question is like, how are you misunderstood? Because you have a history of people not getting it right about you. You do something with an intention, and you know what your intention is, and your intention is good, and they take it the wrong way. And you're like, how is that even possible? Little things like when I'm thinking, I have a slightly grumpy, slightly stern face. And I'm just trying to be present. I'm just trying to listen. But I worked with an assistant once, and at a certain time, she's like, every time I'm talking to you, I feel slightly nervous. And I'm like, why? I'm a lovely man. She's like, you look totally grumpy. And I'm like, I'm never grumpy. I've never said a nasty thing to you ever. And she's like, yeah, but so I'm like, oh, this is how I get misunderstood. So now in conversations with people, I go, let me tell you how you will misinterpret stuff I'm doing, what you think will be happening and what it actually means to me.
Yeah.
So I will tell people, look, I can get a stern look on my face when I'm sitting and listening, and it doesn't actually mean I'm grumpy or upset or worried or anxious. It just means I'm listening. And it's just a helpful way to preempt potential damage.
It's funny because people have said the exact same thing about me. There's no way that anybody could understand every bit and piece of us, but we need to help others understand who or what we're coming from, or, what are the common misconceptions. And I think that's really key, especially in a working relationship. I mean, literally, I'm not going to mention any names, but this just happened in our company where one person got super upset about something that wasn't even a thing. But when the two finally met and had these conversations, there was an understanding and things were better, right?
Yeah. It's not even something which is on surface looks bad and can be misinterpreted, like, a resting grumpy face like I've got. Like, one of the conversations I have, Pat, is I'm very good at having ideas in meetings, but I say, look, what is often misunderstood is that people think I'm attached to these ideas. I have ideas strongly expressed, but very lightly held. And so I'm trying to preempt people feeling like my ideas are overwhelming their ideas just because I've got excited around that.
Oh man, that's good. I'm
like, let me tell you all I can about how I might screw this up, because believe me, I've screwed up plenty of relationships. So it's still going to happen. I'm just trying to reduce the amount of things we have to fix. As somebody once said, I know my kids are going to need therapy. I'm just trying to give them fewer things to talk about.
Yeah. Michael, we could talk for days about this kind of stuff, and we've only breezed through, even just lightly touched a couple of the questions in this book. So I definitely want to recommend we have people check it out and read it and absorb it and practice it. That's the beauty of your books, is they are very, very actionable, and you can see results almost immediately. I saw that with both the Coaching Habit and the Advice Trap, and again, I appreciate you for writing another one in this style, because I think it's going to do a lot of good for, again, not just business relationships, but I imagine that a lot of people listening to this were also thinking about their life partners as well.
Or friends, or just, anybody you're going to work a relationship with, where you're like, I'd like it to be a little deeper and a little safer and a little more vital.
Yeah.
Then there may be something in this book that can be helpful.
Thank you so much for this. One more time, where can people go to check it out?
Yeah, bestpossiblerelationship.com. There's downloads and there's free stuff and all of that good stuff there as well. So I hope you'll jump on there and grab the resources that you're interested in.
And if somebody reads that book, they get a lot of value, their life has changed as a result of that, what would be the best way to let you know about that?
They don't have to let me know about it. I get a thrill when people email me. So you can email me at michael@mbs.works. And that's certainly pretty cool. But honestly, there's one part of this, Pat, which is like, I put this work out in the world and I get thrilled to think that it might be having an impact and I don't even know about it. So I'm celebrating anybody who's brave enough to give it a good shot.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure people will reach out and thank you, just like I personally did.
Which you did. That was so nice. Actually, I heard from somebody going, yeah, Pat Flynn has just said that your book is I'm not sure, book of the year or something. I'm like,
yeah,
Pat Flynn? Oh my goodness, that was so exciting. That was pretty cool.
I appreciate you. And I'm glad that we've kept this relationship going. And
yeah, me too.
I feel like you definitely help me be the best version of myself. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Pat.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Michael. And man, I love him so much. He's helped out so much in my life and in my career, and definitely want you to check out his book, bestpossiblerelationship.com. Again, not just about your loved ones, although this can definitely help with that, but just anybody, coworkers, your team, etc., colleagues. It's so important. So definitely check this out. Many strategies that we didn't even talk about, and ways to think through a lot of the situations that you're going to be finding yourself in. And as we always talk about here on the show, relationships are key. They're absolutely essential to your growth as a creator and an entrepreneur. So definitely, again, check that out, bestpossiblerelationship.com. So thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate you. And definitely check out the show notes and links to all the things over at smartpassiveincome.com/session695. Again, smartpassiveincome.com/session695. Take care. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on these other amazing interviews that we got coming up, plus our Friday episodes with me. Thank you so much. Until then, peace out. Take care. And as always, Team Flynn for the win. Cheers. Thank you so much for listening to the Smart Passive Income podcast at smartpassiveincome.com. I'm your host, Pat Flynn. Sound editing by Duncan Brown. Our senior producer is David Grabowski, and our executive producer is Matt Gartland. The Smart Passive Income podcast is a production of SPI Media and a proud member of the Entrepreneur Podcast Network. Catch you next week. Have you dreamt about being your own boss, but still haven't made the first steps to making that dream a reality? Well, I get that. Starting a business can feel super overwhelming with legal forms, paperwork, finances. It's a lot. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about Taylor Brands. Taylor is a complete business builder designed to make launching your business simple and stress-free. You can register your LLC in just minutes, keeping your personal assets and the business assets separate from day one. From there, you get access to everything you need to get off the ground. Legal documents, licenses and permits, invoicing and bookkeeping tools, and even a 100-day business coaching program, all designed to help you hit the ground running. You'll also get a free personalized business plan, branding tools, and so much more. And of course, listeners of this show get an exclusive 35% discount to get started. All you have to do is head to taylorbrands.com/SPI. That's TAILORBRANDS.com/SPI. Stop dreaming, start building with Taylor Brands. Look, I get it. You want to grow your business, but trying to sell to hundreds or even thousands of people gets very exhausting very fast. But what if you could sell at scale with a simple, powerful quiz? Score App helps you sell to more people without adding more to your plate. You build a quiz or assessment that your audience actually wants to take. Then they answer a few quick questions and get a personalized result right away. It shows them where they're at and what they need to do next and how you can help. And you build huge amounts of trust before you make even a single offer. No hard sell, no chasing leads, just value at scale. Get 50% off the first 3 months using the discount code SPI. All you have to do is just head to scoreapp.com/SPI. Again, that's scoreapp.com/SPI.